And now back to Deadline Live with Jack Blood.
Folks, Randy Weaver with us on the line, live here today, this June 24, 2009. You're listening to Deadline Live. I'm your radio gun, Jack Blood. Randy, here's some of the copy coming out of the Concord monitor as it applies to the Browns. They were ultimately arrested during an undercover operation, October 2007, as we said. Investigators found dozens of improvised explosive devices, rifles, tens of thousands of rounds of ammunition, allegedly, I will say, because we still have yet to see that evidence. The couple are now accused of a combined 11 felonies, including obstruction of justice, failure to appear in court, and conspiracy. I guess there are conspiracies. Conspiracy to impede federal officials if convicted of the most serious charge for possessing destructive devices. The Browns face a mandatory minimum sentence of 30 years in prison. This would be a life sentence for both Ed and Elaine Brown. On the witness list is Danny Riley. He is on the government's witness list. Most people know Danny as the humble protector of the Browns. Both you and I, Randy, spent some time with Danny Riley up in New Hampshire. They are suggesting that he will testify against his former mentors. He was found guilty of several felonies last year, including a destructive device charge. He did not testify at his criminal trial. In fact, he rejected the entire trial. They gave him, I believe, 40 years. You believe that? I don't know if they're just trying to get us to believe this, if they're trying to start some dissension, maybe divide the Browns themselves by putting out disinformation. I have a hard time believing that Danny Riley would testify against Ed and Elaine.
Well, that's hard for me to believe, too, if he's already been sentenced and everything, especially. And he should be as mad as a hornet for what they did to him and never give in to them people.
Everything I've heard is that he is, and he's still not cooperating, still won't take a lawyer. This is also what I've heard about Ed Brown, yet this particular story, again, we don't know how true any of this is, and I haven't had time to really check it all out yet, but allegedly you are on Ed Brown's list. His lawyer has included you on a list of witnesses intended to subpoena, and then you're telling me, again, you've heard nothing about it. The trial starts next week, nor have I heard anything about any subpoenas I might get.
Well, when the newspapers were putting out information, their reports they were making up there at Ruby Ridge during the whole standoff, they were just putting in the paper what the feds were telling them, and most of it was a bunch of malarkey. And it's probably what's going on now.
Yeah.
I doubt if they're getting a lot of information from Ed or Elaine. They're just, they take and run with whatever they get, and it sells newspapers, I guess, and TV time.
And with my contacts, I have some pretty close contacts to Ed and Elaine who have given me direct quotes and kept me in contact with him for the last 2 years. They don't know anything. They seem to be out of the loop as well. Keeping in mind that when Danny Riley was being tried, he tried to fire his lawyer. He filed all these papers in the court describing the judge as a quote-unquote Satanist and a friend of international bankers. He said that his lawyer was an employee of the Treasury Department, which could be true leading up to the IMF. The judge at that point ordered an evaluation of Danny Riley's mental competency.
Oh, they like to pull that crap.
So I don't know what kind of a witness he would even be, though he did, the psychiatrist experts found that he was okay. But, I don't even know what kind of witness he would be if he was a witness, and I don't believe that he is. So doesn't this look a lot like disinformation and propaganda? And I assume it's in order to turn Ed and Elaine maybe against each other. Also in this article, it says that Elaine will be bringing up her children, part of her defense lawyer's idea, because the children believe she's mind-controlled by Ed. I don't believe that. Do you?
No, I don't. No, she's a pretty smart lady.
Yeah.
I don't think so, but during our trial, they called like 46 prosecution witnesses total, and there was about I'd say a half a dozen of them that were really, really mad at the federal government, and just they weren't good witnesses at all. And the reason, and the rest of them, about 90% of the rest of them, our attorneys caught them in so many lies from the grand jury, their initial statements on their 302 files, and then the grand jury, and then in court they was given different stories. It was easy to prove that all a bunch of liars, and so that's what, helped our case, of course. And they didn't, I was sitting there in court and listening to these, my attorneys cross-examine these guys. They didn't bring out 20% of the stuff they could have brought out, brought to light to show how bad these guys are and things that were going on, and we still won that trial. But one U.S. Marshal, after the verdict come in, Kevin got to go home that day, of course, and I had to go back to jail and wait for sentencing on the failure to appear. But he clamped some old cuffs down on my wrist real tight, and I asked him, what are you doing that for? He says, he was mad. He goes, failure to appear. He said, that's like an acquittal. I said, well, you've been listening to what's going on here. What do you think? I said, where are you from anyway? He says, Manhattan. I said, Manhattan? How can you stand and live and work in Manhattan? He says, I love it there. He says, you people out here are all crazy.
Yeah, well, the inmates are running the asylum, as I often say. The people from the District of Criminals in Manhattan and San Francisco, and now, of course, the power is coming from Chicago, as we see here with Barry Obama. I'll touch base with you more on this Ed and Elaine Brown thing, but I would like to get your comments just on what's going on in the world today. I mean, you're really sitting at a kind of a unique bird's eye view. You've experienced the wrath of the police state and the government. We have done extensive investigations into BATF and Michael Sullivan, who was appointed by Bush when Congress and the Senate is out of session. No one actually approved Michael Sullivan to be head of the BATFE, and my information has him, now this shows you what kind of a radio show this is, my information has him involved in the drug and mafia trade back east before he got that certain appointment. Obama hasn't done anything to reverse any of these appointments and positions, including Robert Gates, currently Secretary of Defense. This seems not only like the Bush administration's third term, but a Clinton administration third term.